We're back, and we're going to have a very special treat for you in the person of Rod Martin, one of our free-range minds, whose insights on all things we appreciate so much. We're going to talk with him about a very important topic, but I'd like to give you a couple of thoughts of my own by way of starting. Is the special relationship done? The question of whether the long-standing and unique bond between the United States and Britain is now toast arises as the UK's hard-left government prepares to unilaterally disarm not only itself, but America as well. That would be the practical effect of one of history's worst international agreements. Pursuant to a deal awaiting parliamentary approval in London, the British government would pay billions of dollars to the Chinese communist-tied African nation of Mauritius to imperil the U.S. military's essential use of the Indian Ocean island base called Diego Garcia over 1,200 miles away. Worse yet, if the Brits miss even a single payment, Mauritius can terminate their lease. President Trump has correctly described this deal as an act of, quote, great stupidity, unquote. Parliament must repudiate it or bid farewell to the special relationship. Well, those are some of my thoughts. For more of them, follow me at X, at Frank Gaffney, and also at usfuture.org, the web page of the Institute for the American Future, of which I'm proud to be the president, and which I'm even prouder to have Rod Martin as the chairman of its board. Rod, in addition to all of that, is a serial entrepreneur. He cut his teeth in business with the PayPal Mafia, as it was known. He has also been a policy advisor to then-Governor Mike Huckabee, and is now the driving force behind a terrific online product, the Rod Martin Reports. You can find them at rodmartin.org. Rod, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you with us. You have just signed a letter that scores, I believe, of retired admirals and other influential figures in the United States, and Nigel Farage and a number of other leading Brits have penned in the form of an open letter, basically intended to tell the British Parliament, forget about it. Don't even think about doing this deal. Give us your thoughts as to what on earth is going on here and its implications, sir.
Well, this deal tells you exactly why Donald Trump wants ownership in Greenland, in whatever form that may end up taking. And it just couldn't more completely illustrate how things change unexpectedly over time. No one could have imagined that the British government would be this idiotic, including just about anybody in Great Britain. And my guess is, if they didn't have pretty tight parliamentary discipline, this would fail miserably in the Commons. But of course, they do. And Starmer is going to have to be persuaded not to do this. I can't imagine what's motivating him in the first place. The Chagos Islands, as you know, are uninhabited. There were inhabitants at some point. The descendants of those inhabitants largely live in Mauritius or Great Britain. And they're pretty uniformly opposed to this transfer of the islands they're remotely connected to Mauritius. Mauritius has no historical claim on this. It's just silly. It's post-colonial thought taken to an absurd extreme, and it doesn't make any sense. Again, this is an uninhabited island chain that is sovereign territory of the United Kingdom. This base is subject to a 1966 treaty between us and the Brits, which appears to give us a veto over any such transfer anyway. But the net result of such a transfer is you have a country that is increasingly under Chinese sway in Mauritius that would be the landlord, not our landlord, Britain's landlord. And as you say, under this new deal, if Britain just chose to miss a lease payment, suddenly Diego Garcia is forfeit. Diego Garcia is essential to the United States military. It is the most important base we have in region. It's essential for B-2 bombers. It's essential for submarines on station. It's essential in countless ways. And to let this get away is extremely dangerous. But wait, letting Greenland get away would be even more so. And this almost certainly is a big part of what's driving Donald Trump's push to get sovereignty there.
Yeah. Well, I find it hard to believe that if Donald Trump is prepared to use military force to take Greenland, he would certainly use military force to assure that we continue to have the use of Diego Garcia. But to your point, what on earth is motivating the Brits? I guess what you said about Mauritius is probably true of them, too. They're increasingly in the thrall of communist China because they're basically communists in the British, Parliament. And, Rod, the idea that this is post-colonial strikes me as a little ridiculous because it seems to me what we're doing is we're turning the Chagos Islanders, and there are a few of them, mostly scattered elsewhere, I think, at the moment, over as sort of colonial serfs of Mauritius, of all places, 1,200 miles away, for goodness sake. I mean, this does seem to me a bit rich, don't you
Well, and that's
think?
the absurdity in Greenland. You know, we're going to defend their freedom to be a colony of Denmark. I mean,
Right.
what is that?
Also
And
probably
Denmark
1,200
has
miles
been
away.
Denmark has been a terrible colonial overlord. They were forcibly sterilizing Greenlander women as late as the 1990s. They're as bad as the Belgians in the Congo. It's absurd. And likewise here, Mauritius isn't a good place. That's not some place you'd want to be a part of. And of course, none of these Chagosians actually live in the Chagos. So their tie to this is somewhat remote. And yet, if you actually wanted to decolonize, the right answer would be create an independent Chagosian state and encourage these people to move back and give them some money to construct cities and stuff. But of course, they're not going to do that. Of course, they're going to do something absurd because, as you have rightly identified, Great Britain pretends to still be a free country and our closest ally. But under Keir Starmer, it is absolutely as far down the road to serfdom as you can get. It is a socialist state. It bans free speech and jury trials.
Rod, we have to take a break.
Terrible.
The worst of it is China will get our base if this plays out as planned.
Yes.
Unacceptable. Rod Martin is in the house. Stay tuned. We'll be right back for more. We're back, and so is Rod Martin. He is the tremendous brainpower behind the Rod Martin Report, and you can find that site, rodmartin.org, a wealth of information besides his published material, videos, clips, including some from this program, which we're very proud. You can also get the benefit of his insights into the various rather challenging times in which we find ourselves, and we're so grateful to him for his appearances here to explore all of that. I'd like to turn to China with you. Speaking of the possible inheritors of Diego Garcia, all is not well in the Chinese Communist Party's nation. Rod, you and a doctor by the name of Fujian Yi have had an interesting exchange about the cumulative effects on China of this so-called one-child policy. It was practiced assiduously and enforced, extremely brutally for decades, but it's been thrown over the side in favor of two-child and three-child, and now just as many children as you could possibly have. But it sounds as though it's too late. Tell us about what's going on there and its implications.
Well, it is too late. And Yi has done tremendous work on this. He's a senior scientist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. But of course, he's Chinese and doesn't even speak English that well. He writes it beautifully. He wrote one of the top 100 books of the last decade in China, Big Country, Empty Nest, on exactly this topic. And it was initially banned by the communists, but later it was published and they started acknowledging the problem a bit. The one-child policy put them on a path to an unmitigated train wreck. It turns out that to maintain your country, you actually have to replace yourselves. I know, crazy, isn't it? And the total fertility rate you need for that is about 2.1, which is to say the average woman needs to have 2.1 children for the country to just maintain its current population. Well, of course, very much like Paul Ehrlich at Stanford and all of these anti-natalists in the West around the same time, China became convinced that overpopulation was going to ruin the world, and they imposed this one-child policy starting in the late 70s in earnest in 1980 that forced women to have no more than one, and in fact forced abortions on millions of them over a great many years. It's one of the great humanitarian disasters of all time, and the net result is they don't have enough kids. Now, if you're talking just about kids, yeah, that's mouths to feed. But in China's case, what you have now that the one-child policy is over and now that they've realized what they've done to themselves, they actually have too few young people to be able to support the rising, ballooning percentage of the population that's elderly. That's only going to intensify over the next 25 years. It is absolutely irreversible at this point, and the propaganda worked. Young women in China don't want to have babies, even when the government encourages them to do it. So you've created a cultural monster that is on track not to give you a TFR of 2.1, but to stabilize in the neighborhood of 0.9. And what that does, and what Yi's work demonstrates, is it reduces the Chinese population by 75% before the end of the century. They are in free fall, and that's why the next 10 years are so dangerous, because they've realized this, they have to grab what they can while they can.
And, there's an aspect to this that makes it even more menacing in a way, and that is that when Chinese couples were told they could only have one child, they certainly didn't want that child to be a female. So you had selected abortions on a massive scale. Our friend Gordon Chang estimates, I don't know what his estimate is, but he says 40 million young men in China have no women. Yeah, so even if all of the women that are there of childbearing age wanted to have children, it's not enough, because all of these other would-be couples are no longer possible because the women are simply not there. They've been murdered. By some estimates, I've been told it's like 400 million of those babies, most of them women, were, essentially slaughtered by the Chinese Communist Party. That's in addition to the 100 million, people who are out of the womb already that they killed as well. It's just, as you say, it's a humanitarian, it's a moral monstrosity of unprecedented proportions in the world.
It's a catastrophe, and America has too low a fertility rate. Also, we're hovering around 1.6. That's not good. But at the same time, we can make up for it with immigration, ideally of the legal variety. China can't. There's nowhere that would immigrate to them. There's no equivalent of Mexico for them. And Chinese culture is really opposed to trying to assimilate people from foreign countries. So it just doesn't work. They're in free fall.
Speaking of free fall, there is an ongoing debate among others, our team on the Committee on the Present Danger of China, of which you are an important member, Rod Martin, about whether we won't call it slaughter, I guess, but purging of significant senior members of the Chinese People's Liberation Army is evidence of Xi Jinping's imminent downfall or his success. Where do you come down on that?
Yes, that's exactly right. The danger for us in the limited time we have left is that by everything I can tell, Zhang Yaosha, the top general in China and one of the few remaining senior commanders who actually has operational experience, is the guy who knows China really shouldn't try to invade Taiwan. And the hawk here is actually Xi Jinping. So a lot of people in the West have this backwards, I think. They think that getting rid of a military guy might mean peace. More likely, it means a bunch of yes men in the top ranks who do whatever Xi says.
Yeah, and that sounds like war to me with Taiwan and us. Thank you for your time, Rod Martin. Come back to us with updates next week if you would. In the meantime, keep up the great work at rodmartin.org. I hope the rest of you will join us next time as well. Until then, go forth and multiply.